So lesson number 1 is why brand building matters. Objective of this course is for you to be able to make a case at your company on why brand building is a must-do versus a nice-to-have, and why it's critically important to your business strategy. First and foremost, brands are shortcuts to decision making. Well, let's face it, this is the world we live in. The average person sees over 5,000 messages per day. And that's 1.8 million messages a year. Consumers will thank you for helping them understand quickly what your brand stands for so that they can make a decision much more easily than having to filter through all of the choices they have to make every single day. And those brands that are not a shortcut in people's minds will really just fall to the wayside. So it's critically important that you define what your brand stands for and that there is one single-minded thought that comes to mind for people, and we're going to talk about that today. So take a few minutes and think about how many messages you see each day, and really take some time to think about it. And we're not just talking about advertising, we're talking about how many times you get pinged even in the middle of your workday on all your different apps and social media that you flip through every day. It's a lot of messages to absorb, and your brain needs a way to take shortcuts and make decisions. And here's another example. The average supermarket has over 30,000 brands. So it's a wonder that people can go in and out of a supermarket sometimes in an hour or less. And that's because of the role of brand. It's because they can go to a shelf and they can make a quick decision. And almost all of the time, consumers are choosing brands that they know. And it's your role as a brand marketer to make sure they're choosing you. So take a few minutes and think about what is your favorite brand and write it down. And then, very importantly, why is it your favorite brand? Chances are it plays a meaningful difference in your life. For me, I would say one of my favorite brands is Starbucks, because every morning when I wake up, I think about that cup of coffee. I know that I can order it on my phone, and so I'm not going to spend any extra time by stopping by Starbucks in the morning, and it's definitely one of my favorite brands. And there is a feeling that I get from it. I drive past other coffee shops, but they've been consistent for me over time. They have my favorite drink. They know my name when I walk in. Therefore, it's one of my favorite brands. And I'm sure you have your own stories about what your favorite brands are and why it's your favorite brand. So let's get warmed up further. What feelings or thoughts come to mind for these brands for you? Take a minute and write them down. Chances are we had similar answers. So when you think about Nike, you likely feel inspired, and their goal is to make everybody feel like an athlete and have spent years building their message around just do it. Geico, you likely think of savings. They've spent years building the message that it only takes 15 minutes to save 15% or more. So likely if you are in the position to change car insurance or any kind of insurance, Geico's probably top of mind for you because you know you're going to save money. And then of course there's Apple, which simplicity probably comes to mind for you, because not only have they spent a lot of their time building that perception as their brand, their products really pay it off and they deliver a consistent experience, whether you're buying a product from them, seeing an ad that they've created and or walked into their store. Everything about Apple is simple. So this is what it means to have a singular focus for your brand and creating a shortcut for people so that they know what you stand for. And we're going to talk about how to do that today. The other thing I want to say is building consumer brands is no different than building B2B brands. I know a lot of people who take this course are going to be on the B2B side, and I've had people ask me like, well, what's different, or can you talk to me more about B2B brand building? And it's really the same, even though your audience is different, the channels that you choose to use might be different. The heart of it comes down to understanding what you stand for and the benefit that you provide to your customer. This is a great quote from a friend of mine and a phenomenal CMO named Carla, who leads IBM's marketing team. As B2B marketers, we forget that our number one responsibility is to create relationships and add value. That's not going to happen by peppering LinkedIn inboxes, chasing people with banner ads, or flooding inboxes. We need to create more of that pull than a push by educating and inspiring customers through the right kind of storytelling. And this is so true. I'm sure all of you get tons of messages in your inboxes, specifically on LinkedIn, that just fall on deaf ears. So it's still about creating a relationship and being clear what benefit you offer. But why relationships and value? Well, it's because of your customers. Because let's face it, there's likely an endless supply of similar products and services that meet a consumer's utilitarian need. And customers are looking at brands as a way to make that choice and self-identify. And you can think about it like this: actual self plus brand equals ideal self. Many people attach themselves to brands as a way to express themselves and what they care about. Another important reason why brand building matters is that it makes all of your sales efforts work harder. There are a lot of companies that really separate out brand marketing and performance marketing. And in fact, I've seen in every case that having a strong brand makes your performance marketing work harder. It makes your sales team job easier. In fact, I'm going to share a quick story to really illustrate this point. So my very first week at Indeed, I took a trip to Germany and talked to the sales leadership team in our office there and asked them what the biggest challenge was we were facing in that market. It was a little different situation than some of our markets where we were actually the number 2 brand there, not the number 1 brand. People weren't aware of us and they didn't understand anything about us. So of course that made the job of the sales team really hard. They would reach out, they would call and either get hung up on or people would just say they weren't interested because no one knew what Indeed was and didn't want to give them the time of day. So we decided 3 years ago to launch a brand campaign there and really start building awareness on what we had to offer and do it in a really culturally relevant way. Another concern they had was making sure that our brand came across as a brand that was relevant to the German market. And so really started by understanding that and looked for ways to bring our brand to life and begin building awareness. I'm going to share with you one of many ads we've done over the last few years as part of a campaign called Ingrid Explains Indeed.
Ingrid, hast du einen Job als Programmierer für mich?
Selbst im Homeoffice verwechseln mich alle mit diesem Indeed.
Sie haben Jobs, oder?
Ingrid, ich suche einen Homeoffice-Job.
Nein, ich habe keinen Job für dich!
Nicht Ingrid, sondern Indeed durchsucht tausende Webseiten nach dem richtigen Job für dich. Indeed.
So this campaign has been running for 3 years, and over the course of this time, we've become number 1 in the category, and that is both in traffic as well as sales. And as importantly, the sales team now says that not only are people willing to talk to them when they call, but in a lot of cases, they're responding to customers calling them and being interested in Indeed. So again, brand building makes your sales efforts work harder. All right, so to wrap this lesson up, I want you to think about this question. When a customer sees your logo or gets an email from you or sees an ad, what do you think the first thing that comes to mind for them is? Write that down. Next, I want you to think about whether that aligns with what you want it to be, or perhaps you don't know yet, and we're gonna talk about that in that course. But at the end of the day, you really wanna align your customer's perception with what you want it to be. And obviously, you can always rely on research. Chances are you've got an idea what people might think of your brand, if they think of your brand. Hopefully they do. But one way to really understand it is by doing research. And qualitative's a great way to really get at this, just by asking people up front, when you think of our category, what's the first brand that comes to mind? See if you're on the list. I hope that you are. If not, you've obviously got some awareness building to do. Secondly, if you know my brand, what is the first thought that comes to mind? See what that is, and then compare that with what comes to mind for your competitors. All of that will help you begin building out what you want that brand shortcut to be.